welcome to the Property Unleashed with me, Mark Fitzgerald. It's great to have you joining us here today. And today I am joined by a special guest. Michael Sargent is joining me from Sargent's Property Group. Good to have you on the show, Michael. How are you?
Thank you, Mark. I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm very, very well, very well. Now, Michael is into his serviced accommodation and deal sourcing and has been building up a portfolio and a massive headache for himself over the last few months. So I thought it'd be great to get him on the show. He's also a member of the Ultimate Serviced Accommodation Business Builder Training Program that is run by Graham Linley. So we are firsthand helping him on his property journey, and he's also smashing it. So, Michael, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, mate?
Oh, yeah. I don't know where to start, really. I'll start with, I guess, where I was before I got into property. So I've got a 10, 12 years of sales background. So predominantly software sales. So winning business and I guess winning clients has been my bread and butter for the last decade, really. I knew I wanted to get into something different, and property for me was, I guess, just a big cash cow. You know, it was just something that everyone did, and they always did well. It's always the kind of what you want to set yourself to achieve. So I always thought, though, that you needed loads of money to start. Kind of what, same thing that everyone thinks is that whole cliche mindset. But when I started learning about rent to rent, I started doing my own digging, my own research, and yeah, I went to a few property seminars. I guess this wasn't even a year ago. So to think how fast and what's happened in the short space of time is insane. But it was July last year. I went to a course. It was a day for £1. It was the best pound I've ever spent in my life, because I walked out of that and I remember thinking, man, I just felt electric, and I've never really known what I've wanted to do to that extent. I've had good jobs, I've had okay money, but I've just kind of worked for the money rather than had any money working for me. But yeah, I walked out of there and I was just buzzing. And I remember I said to my wife, this is what I want to do. She has heard that a few times, mind. So she took it with a pinch of salt. But I knew this was different. And yeah, I just threw everything into it, really. I started looking. Initially, I wanted to set up, get into HMOs. That was I guess the easiest route within property in my mind at the time. Service accommodation had more kind of nuts and bolts, and I thought it just looked a bit more complex. So for someone just starting out, HMOs was just a lot more simplistic. So I went on a rent-to-rent course, and I started just looking at the returns for SA in comparison to HMOs, really, and talking to landlords. Again, going back to my sales experience, I found that quite natural. Doing a bit of cold calling and calling landlords about viewings and agents, it just felt I was quite comfortable doing that. So I got interviews quite quickly, and I built relationships with the landlords quite quickly. So I got my first unit in December, and that was in Bristol. So I live in Cardiff, so it was a bit of a commute, and that was a massive learning curve, because I must have made every mistake under the sun. I was there Boxing Day changing bed sheets myself, not really preparing myself. But yeah, the reason I went into service accommodation, because I realized there was a lot more money to be made if you kind of systemize it properly. It's a lot more work, but again, it can be a lot more rewarding if you do it properly. So yeah, so fast forward, what are we now? We're in the 17th of May. So my goal for 2023 was to get 15 units, and I tried to set myself a goal that was not unachievable, but one that was a challenge. And I guess in theory, one that I thought was unachievable, because I thought if I have that mindset, I won't be. If I get 13, I'll be happy. But It's been less than a year, and I've signed for my 20th, which would be going live end of July. So I met a landlord who had a big portfolio, done a lot of work together, and they're happy. So they're just drip feeding me their whole portfolio. So it's definitely blown up a lot quicker than I expected, which is a great problem to have. But it comes with the challenges. Learning to delegate was a huge thing for me. This is kind of my baby. It's something I've brought on, and that's something that I think I need to, I guess, learn, is how to give away some of those processes to, but there are going to be people that are better than this than I am, I guess. So I look forward to meeting them when I can.
Well, the one thing is, I mean, absolutely remarkable story. You set your targets on 15, you've just signed your 20th, and it's not even been a year. So that's massive, massive growth. But with that comes the responsibility. And one thing I've found in my businesses is, and maybe I'm being a bit big-headed here, but nobody will ever do it as good as you. But they don't have to. They just need to do it good enough. And I think that's something that I had to get into my thinking when I was handing over work and letting people, take on responsibilities. And that is one of the hardest things. Like you say, it's your baby. You're holding on to it. And now you've got to system. I mean, that is massive. 20 units. That's huge. So what's your sort of next plans and steps with that at the moment then? What are you working on?
Well, so I have a deal sourcing side to the business, really. So any deal that I sell, I manage. That's kind of my terms. I say 90%. I think about 95% of the deals that I have sourced have been to investors that are out of city. So anyone dotted around London, other parts of the UK. So they couldn't manage them anyway. And, them seeing the units that I have already, it just makes sense for them to allow us to manage it. So it's quite easy for me to manage, which is also why I tend to take on, my management business has grown a lot quicker, because I'm doing it alongside the deal sourcing. But at the moment, it's both sides are expanding. Social media for me is massive for gaining investors. They get a lot of exposure. They see what you're doing. I know you do something similar. So I actually found you through social media. So, it does make sense, right? But filming content, I'm sure you can weigh in on this, but filming content, it's a job in itself. It takes a lot of time, and thinking about the content that you have to create. For me, it was just, I needed to clone myself to get all the jobs done. So I've recently taken on a social media manager who's managing my social media. So that will drive some traffic through there, hopefully. So to build a bigger investor list, and all the properties all the viewings I'm going on, I'll have a bigger investor list to kind of sell those to. So that side of the business is kind of moving nicely. In terms of the management, I'm in the process now of finding a PA. So somebody that I can palm over some processes to, in the hope that they'll grow with me. I want them to kind of essentially become operations at some stage. So they're not only taking on the task that I give them, but they will have some input on some operation, best practices that I wouldn't be aware of. Going back to having someone that's better than you at certain things, I think it is important to find people that can do the job better than you. Otherwise, why would you hire them at the end of the day,
Well, that's it. I mean, that's it. I'm not good at all the admin. I leave the admin to the team and everything. I'll review it and I'll have a look at it, but I don't really want to be there doing it. So if you can hand out those things, then it really does help you. And of course, it's about also at the moment, so to speak, you're in the business, aren't you? You're in the weeds of it all. And it's very difficult to be able to plan and to be able to get good results when you're so deep, in the day-to-day running of it. So trying to step back when everything is coming at you at 100 miles an hour can be very, very difficult. So you've got 20 serviced accommodation units going live. How many landlords then are you dealing with? Because are they all rent-to-rents?
Yeah, they're all rent-to-rents. So how many landlords am I dealing with? So I've got one agent. I've got a few agents, but there's one in particular that I've got a really good relationship with, and they're just handing me deal after deal. That's then going to a handful of investors. They tend to be the same ones, because as soon as ultimately, if you're making money, you reinvest. So if you do a good job with one investor, they make a bit of money, they reinvest with you again. So it seems to be, it's not a huge pool of investors, not a huge pool of agents. The landlords, I think I'd say about 5 or 6, but it could be more if I had more time. It's just, to be honest, I don't think I'd have the capacity to even take on too many more at this stage anyway. But it's good to know that what we're doing is working. We just need more, feet on the ground, I guess.
So what's your first sort of jobs that you want to be outsourcing? What are you looking at the moment? Have you defined that sort of role?
So that's something I'm working on at the minute. My brother owns a good, quite a successful a marketing company. And he always said, we were discussing this the other day, I'm at the stage now where I'm trying to record my processes, because if I have to delegate that to somebody else, I need to, because I know how it works in my head, but trying to translate that and put it on paper even is going to be a challenge, because that's not something I've thought of, which sounds simple really, but when you until you think about it, it's not, because I've just done it in my own way, I guess, which probably, is going to be to some people not the right way. But so at the moment, I'm trying to set some processes, record some processes in terms of, it could be as simple as things of uploading properties onto management tools, or systemizing, integrating software tools, that kind of thing. But just trying to record my processes so then I can actually delegate that and pass that on to somebody. So that's what I'm focusing on now. And as soon as I have enough in one sort of, I guess, bubble, because at the moment I'm not really sure what I want to delegate. I'm not sure what part of the role, what part of my role I'm going to not palm off, that's probably the wrong word, but what part I'm going to
delegate first.
Yeah, delegate first. So I'm in that phase really, just trying to work out what's best.
I think the OTAs and things like that, obviously revenue management, you want to control yourself, but it's just really getting the listings up there, looking at the bookings, and, start to get somebody in there that can deal with a bit of the day-to-day sort of noise that you don't have to predominantly be overtaking it. And of course, like I say, 20 odd properties with about 6 different, agents and landlords. As I always say to people, you don't need to have 20, agents or 20 landlords to get this amount of deals. You just need to find the right ones, don't you?
Absolutely. The landlord I had with the first property with called me the other day and gave me another one. So it just constantly comes back around.
Yeah. No, that's brilliant. That is ace. And so looking towards the future and everything, how big do you want to be? What are your aspirations?
I think in terms of property management, that's a question I got asked recently, and it was never my plan to go into property management. It was just a plan to get my own rent-to-rents and to deal source. But because I guess I did a decent job, it was noticed by investors, and then they couldn't manage them themselves. So organically, I ended up with the SA management company, and it's just cash is king, right? You want cash flow, and to scale a business, you need cash flow. If I was to source for a year but then stop sourcing, the business is stopped, because I am the business. But with SA, you have 3-year, 5-year agreements. So, that is constant cash flow, whether I, not take my foot off the gas, but whether I continue to bring on new clients or stop. So at the moment, I think I want to focus a bit on deal sourcing, and because we've got quite a lot of units that we're currently onboarding. So for the next, I say until the end of the year, I think I'm quite comfortable with the amount of units that we've won. Make sure everyone's happy, because I don't want to, in fact, Graham Linley said something to me the other day about startups. He said most businesses don't fail in the first year because they don't win enough work. It's because they take on too much and they sink, which really resonated with me. I thought, wow, I need to take that on board, because I want to continue doing well. So in terms of long term, I think deal sourcing, not just SA, but probably BRR deals and bigger development deals. But I want to go into development as like an end game. I think that was always the end game. And just see how big I can grow it, really. But I want to work in property. I don't want to be a property manager. I don't want to be a deal sourcer. I don't want a title or a label. I want to try all the strategies and see which was best. And you want to diversify, right? Just to make sure that
definitely
you have the strongest chance of winning.
Yeah, definitely. And I never got into all of this to be a property manager, which is why I always say build a business that you can systemize, that you can step back from, that you can potentially sell in the future, who knows, and move on. And of course, then you can go and do the things that you want to do. So get out there, nail the cash flow, get the systems in place. And then once you have, of course, your world's your oyster. You can step back, you can have a bit of time off, you can go and do some developments, you can try your hand at everything that's there. But it's first and foremost, we all want to skip the gears a lot of the time, isn't it? It's getting sorted what we actually need. And of course, more revenue doesn't always mean more profit. So it's about finding that balance of, the people that you need in your business to make it function right, how much you want to be taking from the business or how much profit you want the business to be making, and then just find that balance. And then it's just a case of maintaining it. I think what you can see, and you've probably seen it yourself as well, is a lot of people just want to keep growing until the bubble pops. because they just think more units, more units, more units, more money, more people, and they're over, they're overemploying. Something might happen in the economy, things take a bit of a slower turn, their profits aren't massive, and then all of a sudden you can be out of business as quick as you can be in business, which is obviously what Graham's showing you as well. So what made you want to come and join us then on the Ultimate Serviced Accommodation Business Builder?
So I was on I joined an academy slightly different to Graham's service accommodation course. It was more of a broad property course, so it touched in BRR, service accommodation, HMO, deal sourcing, every kind of strategy. But that's how I learned to get started. But there was no content on what to do once you actually are started, and that's when the real work begins. You can give everyone the advice on how to get your first unit, and when I got it, I was buzzing. And then I was like, whoa, now what do I do? Because there was almost no roadmap after that. And it's easy to get. Well, I say that with a pinch of salt. It was easy to get, but it's very easy to lose if you're not doing it correctly. So I got friends who are on the course, and they mentioned they just thought the content was amazing.
Yeah.
So I had a look at what they were doing, and just joined pretty much straight away, really.
I remember that. It was quite a quick thing.
I mentioned it to you on in the afternoon, and I was on it within an hour. So
yeah, you took action. We like action takers, but you did. You jumped straight in, and has it lived up to the expectations that you were hoping for?
Oh yeah, massively. I mean, I'm one of those guilty people where I'm so busy, it's difficult to keep up. But everything I've learned is so detailed, and again, it's all about what to do when you have the business, and it talks about so many things I never would have thought of myself or even knew. So if it wasn't covered, I wouldn't have noticed things like hitting VAT. Like, it's so important to learn things like that when you run a business. And I was edging closer and closer, and I realized I needed to kind of split my businesses up and operate it properly. And it was just really helpful. And, if I did hit VAT at that stage, my business would have been over before it even started. So that small thing, I guess, was invaluable.
Game changer at the end of it. I mean, the thing is, a lot of training out there will show you how to get a deal. Okay. Fundamentally, that's great. But like you say, and I know it, because we're living and breathing it, the real work begins when you sign on the dotted line. That's normally in everybody's mind is, just want to get that deal signed, and then I'm happy. Yeah. And then I can sit back and relax and let the money flow in, because that's what everybody tells you, isn't it? But it's not. The realization is the work's just begin. I say to people on my training as well, enjoy now, because as soon as you start getting some deals over the line, you're going to be working hard. You know what I mean? And then it's all about putting those processes in and building up those systems and things. And I think with Graham, of course, the fact that he's been 7-8 years in the business, he's built something that scaled it massively, over 150 odd units, that he has been around the block a few times now, as you could say. So he looks at things very, very differently from an advanced view that a lot of people who've maybe just got a handful of properties and then they're showing people how to do it, but don't have, because maybe they haven't hit the threshold of VAT yet. But, Graham has. He's systemized a full business. I mean, he's back in Dubai, the lad. He might be in there. He might be back in Dubai on work, but, every month he is somewhere around the world, and that's the lifestyle that he wants to live. And that's great, because that's where you want to be getting it, safe in the knowledge that your business is running. So I'm hugely excited, and also, appreciative that you've come in. Obviously, the training is living up to the expectation. I mean, one thing I always like to ask people is the group coaching sessions that you have with Graham as well. I mean, how valuable have you found those?
Yeah, they are really valuable. It's actually, it's quite interesting to see how everybody has a chance to talk and ask questions to Graham. So, he answers everyone's questions, and to see where everyone is on their journey as well, not just the advice that he can offer, but people are experiencing different things. So you do pick up a lot just being on that, call for an hour or 2 hours. But it also makes you realize how far you've come when you see people who are just starting out. And it wasn't that long ago that I was asking the same questions, and you don't realize how much you've learned from being on these calls and, listening to, following the course. And so it's definitely very valuable.
Yeah, it's power in the community at the end of the day, because I find that myself. If you're in a good circle of people trying to do things, they'll ask questions that you maybe, like you say, haven't thought of, or you do know. I find this sometimes. I listen to somebody, I think, oh, I know that. Then I'll listen to the answer, and I'll think, yeah, I knew that. Why am I not doing it?
Yeah,
It's some of those as well, isn't it?
yeah. A good thing as well is the property. I wouldn't say it can be lonely, but it can be it's isolating. Sometimes you're working on your own quite a lot, when you kind of go off and do your own thing, right? You can get higher staff eventually, but at the beginning, having those people around you, or even virtually, and getting bouncing off each other, kind of bouncing ideas off each other, is really important because it keeps you sane. It keeps you, people are doing the same job as you, I guess, regardless of where they are geographically. It's quite important, I think, to share that with someone else.
Yeah. And also, of course, where you are at the moment with massive growth in a very short space of time, it is quite nice to be able to, soundboard off of people, to talk to people, and, even on a group coaching course to say, put your hand up, which is fair enough, and just say, I'm struggling here. I'm getting what I wanted to get, but all of a sudden it's not quite panning out the way I want. And of course, that's where a lot of people could fall over. They could get burnout. They could want to quit and everything. But I think, being in the community and being able to ask the questions and just being honest with people. And I know you were with one of the coaching calls where you just said, I'm struggling to stay afloat here just because I'm doing everything. And I remember Graham then was saying, this is what you need to do. I know that feeling. He was saying, I know that feeling. And of course you do. But these is the steps now that you need to start implementing. And I think having somebody tell you that and hold you accountable to actually doing those things, because it's easy to listen to it and you think, yeah, it's easy for you. And sometimes you just think, well, where do I start? But like I say, now you're looking at the tasks and the jobs that you want to give people. And I think once you've nailed that, once you've got a few key people in your business now, taking those, I was going to say silly little things, but they're not silly little things, taking those jobs away from you, then you will fly. You'll absolutely fly. And that's when you can really start to come out of the weeds. You can look at the helicopter view of your businesses, the deal sourcing, and start to try and systemize that a bit. And of course, the people that you can use for both businesses as well, can't you?
Yeah, that's the hope. I think what I want to get to is I want to work on the business, not in the business. So you're still involved, but you're kind of helping it grow. You're nurturing it. And one of the good things about what Graham was saying, he did make suggestions about what stages to hire, particular members of staff. So a VA, or sorry, not a VA, a PA, for example. But he also kind of points you in the direction of people that he knows that he's worked with in the past, or gives good recommendations. So it's quite handy to have that input, because going in blind, I've never hired anyone before. So that was the thing for me. It sounds quite trivial to some people, but for me, like, hiring someone is almost, you don't know what you don't know, right? So when I was going to ask them how they can add value of any way, I know what I need done, but there's going to be some a learning curve, I guess, even with that. So everything's just quite new, and it's always good to have that support, I guess, where you can ask questions about things that are new to you.
Yeah.
No matter
I mean, even in the training, we have a module and we go through how to hire staff, what to say, how to advertise for the positions that you want and things. So, at least for yourself, you've got a bit of a roadmap there to help you. And then it's just you deciding the specifics to do in that. But yeah, I mean, it's like a whirlwind. That was why I was so excited to get you on the show, because, you got your first deal, so to speak, last year. You're up to 20 deals now. And sometimes, people say, well, it's slow going. And it is slow going for a lot of people. But of course, a lot of people will be saying, well, how's he managed it? How have you actually managed to get a hold of all of these deals? Because, it's not always rocket science, but sometimes you have your own methods and ways of doing things. So are you happy to share how you've sort of got most of your leads?
Yeah, well, funnily enough, there's a small backstory to this. So I worked for a software company. So I worked for them for about a year, and I wasn't planning on leaving. I was going to run my company with, again, a few rent-to-rents at the same time, so just have a bit more cash flow. And I was with a sales job. It comes with a lot of targets, and it comes with a lot of responsibility, a lot of pressure as well. But they're not a fan of you diverting attention elsewhere, because it will affect the numbers, which is inevitable eventually. So I was doing it kind of quietly, I guess, setting up a website to attract landlords, that kind of thing, but not really putting 100% into it. And it got to a point where landlords were speaking to me, but I had no online presence, so they were not really taking me seriously. I wasn't that credible. So I just thought, I'm going to have to say something to my director and just lay it on really thin and see what I can get away with. So I said to him, look, I've got a little side hustle, as I called it, nothing serious. I'm going to pop it on LinkedIn just because it's something I'm doing on the side, but it won't affect my job in any way. It's just, I guess, I didn't say a side job, but a side hustle was the route I went down, but I really underplayed it. And he said, Mike, absolutely fine. Don't worry about it. As long as it doesn't affect your job, we don't mind. And I thought, okay, cool. So India States was the management company at the time. India States director went on LinkedIn. The amount of traffic I had, everyone, well, congratulations on the new job. There was so many likes and it was getting shared. And I thought, oh, Mike doesn't really match the picture that I painted. So the day after, I'm in the office and he popped over to my desk and he said, hi, mate, just want to have a chat upstairs about 1 o'clock just to explain to me what you're actually doing. I thought, yeah, no problem. And I had a feeling, I thought, yeah, I knew something wasn't going to go well. So 1 o'clock, I went up to the meeting and the owner of the business was sitting in front of the desk with him with a notepad out and a pen. And I thought, well, I see where this is going straight away. So I sat down and they asked me about it and I explained what I was doing. And they gave me an ultimatum at the end and they said, look, there's going to be a dip in your numbers when you start doing this. Funny they said that because I've been doing it for 3 months and I was the highest earning salesman in the business at that point. However, I didn't tell them that. But they said, yeah, well, I didn't want to say I've been doing it for too long, but they gave me the ultimatum and said, look, you can stay. We want you to stay, but you have to cancel your directorship. You have to take down your website and, basically knock that on the head completely or resign. And I said, you're not going to want me working for you if you make me resign this because, cancel my directorship. You're not going to want me here because I'm just going to resent you. And I know now what I've learned. There's no way I can't not do it. Like I have to make this happen. So on my wife's birthday, I resigned my job with immediate effect, and I went home and told my wife that, happy birthday, you've got an unemployed husband. But
how did that go down?
To be honest, she was super supportive. She knew what I was doing in the background anyway. It was inevitable. It was going to happen at some stage. It just happened quicker than planned.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so that was it. It was like crunch time. I couldn't fail. I could not make this work. So every day, I go to the gym every morning. I was getting up the next day. I went to the gym, but I couldn't even train. I was there for 10 minutes and I went home because I was so like, well, I got to work now. I just had this fire/anxiety that just kept pushing me. And I just spoke to every landlord, went to every property event, I walked into agencies with business cards. I made flyers. I was popping them in letterboxes everywhere. So I just did everything I could, really. I mean, some of it worked, some of it didn't, but I met the right people, met a few landlords. They went on some viewings. And I went to a property event. I went to a property networking event, met a couple of guys who were actually on Graham's course as well. And they were starting out just like I was. And I think we kind of pushed each other. He actually works in sales, so we're very competitive, which is quite, kind of healthy, competitive. But we bounced off each other, helped each other, and we've naturally built a small, I wouldn't say community, but a small network of people who, trying to achieve the same thing. But yeah, it's kind of just grown and grown, and the landlords that I've done work for have just come back. So I must be doing something right.
No, I love the story as well. Thank you for sharing that because, I can resonate with you. I took voluntary redundancy and very much the same. It was a case of, this is my moment. I've got to make it happen. And it's amazing how hard you work when you've basically given up a sound job and you think to yourself, I can't fail now because it's basically you almost feel yourself, don't you? It's my credibility. That's how I felt. I didn't want to let my kids down. I didn't want to let my wife down. But I didn't want to let my own credibility down because I thought to myself, I can do this. This can be done. People are doing it all over the place. I've just got to do in every waking minute as much as possible to make it happen.
Yeah, absolutely. I knew I could do the job. There was not a flicker of doubt in my mind. And I think it's the sales mentality that you are naturally trying to be the best. In any sales job, you always want to be the top biller, as they call it, because take on the most money, really. But sales does come with that competitive edge, and I think when you're doing it on your own as well, you can't hide behind anyone. You're not in an office where you've got a team. You're doing it by yourself. So I had to make it work. And obviously, when I left that job and I guess put all my eggs in that basket, I just, I wouldn't let myself fail. So I wouldn't sit down for too long without, emails being sent out, or just the added extra looking through LinkedIn, trying to find anything really, just to keep it going.
Did you find that burning, nagging feeling that if you did try and sit down, you felt you're cheating yourself and you should be doing something?
Constantly. I have it now, to be honest. That's part of the problem. I say a problem. It can be a problem if you let it get too big. That's going back to what we were saying, hiring someone where you can kind of give some of that away, because that gives you the chance to sit down. And I think I'm at the point. I probably was at that point about a month ago, but we're definitely there now.
Yeah. Well, you need to sit back, and you need to have time actually I try now to plan out what I do plan out. I have an hour, which is just thinking time. So I'll just sit there and I'll just brainstorm and write things. And I don't even really ever sit down with a purpose, but I think, right, look at my business. So let's look at this business. How's it going? Are the fires stoked? Is it performing the way it should be? And it's nice to be able to do that. But of course, it takes a bit of time to be able to build that in. But when you can do it, you get a bit of clarity on everything. But I also found that when I first took voluntary redundancy and I was still trying to get deals, it would be like Friday about 4 or 5 o'clock. Nothing else is really going to happen. And, maybe I got some viewings at the weekends. Maybe I haven't. But I'd be walking around the house and the wife would say to me, why don't you sit down and chill out? I said, because I need to be doing something.
Yeah, I know that feeling. I do that a lot.
You've done everything.
Yeah. But I think you go into that mindset, you're in overdrive. And then when you finish the tasks of the day that never are really finished, your brain is still in that kind of mindset of, you just highly strung, I guess. You're wound up slightly, so you don't really know how to relax. But for me, like, go back to what I was saying earlier, I train every day. If I don't train, I'm just a nightmare to be around. My brain's scatty, I'm unorganized, I'm stressed. But that 1 hour in the morning, if I can just dedicate that hour to myself and just train, go for a walk the dog, simple things really, but just clear your head, because all of my problems are solved and all my ideas come to me when I'm 1, in the shower, 2, walking the dog, or just not trying so hard to focus. So it's definitely important to step away every now and then.
Yeah, well, it's that time. That's why you just sit there and it's like thinking time. Even then, when I do that, there's something in the back of my mind saying, Mark, you need to be doing something here. You just sat thinking what you're doing. It's not producing it, but it actually produces more in the long run. And I also think if you can get yourself into a routine, like your training or walking your dog, and just, sometimes I listen to audiobooks or podcasts or music even, but sometimes I just like to walk for an hour or something with the dog and not listen to anything. Do you know what I mean? It's just in your own thoughts, just listen to the world, take it in. Sometimes that's nice. And and I also just appreciate the fact that I'm not in the daily grime. I'm not a 9-to-5 corporate slave or anything like that anymore. It is appreciating what you've got around you. And whilst it could be difficult at times now and feel hard, congratulations, you've done bloody well. You've smashed it, mate. And that is really commendable.
Thanks. It's good to see it paying off. And what you just said then about just enjoying the fact that you're not on 9-to-5 is quite funny, because I work more now than I've ever worked before. But I love what I do because it's in my terms, and I'm doing, everything is a result of the choices that I make in business. And I think to see it going well it just feels good, I guess, to be successful to some extent, providing I now start delegating some work so it doesn't come crashing down.
Well, we'll help you with that as well, won't we? Graham's already on that, and you've got the training that you're going through, so you know what to do. It's just putting it into place, and of course doing it. And as the old saying goes, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. And a lot of people say to me, Mark, you need to take your foot off the gas. You're going to burn yourself out. And you're going to stress yourself out, burn yourself out and everything. And I'm just like, I'm fine. I could do this all day long. I have, got the wife, got the kids and stuff. So I do have to make sure that I balance that. And sometimes she has to remind me, come on, Mark, you've got a family here as well. And it's just like, I know, but I just want to finish this because I'm enjoying what I'm doing. Do you know what I mean? So no, that's great. And what do you do for fun?
Oh, wow. What do I do for fun? Do you know what? That was a word that I forgot for a while. I said this to my wife the other day, I need to start enjoying life more rather than, because I had the mentality recently that Saturday and Sunday are the best days to work because no one's emailing me. Offices, agents are closed. But realistically, I need to take time for myself. And I think for me, sport is probably the main thing I do at the moment. But just spending time with my family, really. I've got an 8-year-old daughter. She's amazing. But her name's India, actually. So that actually where India States came from. But yeah, I think just spend as much time with my family at the moment as I can. And I've stopped drinking, which is a decision I made when I got into business because I just thought one hangover day can ruin a week. So, and I just think it's so much better for me to be clear-headed. So it's more just about being out. I do love being outdoors.
Yeah.
But I think my life's changing in that respect. I love traveling, but I've got so many big plans to travel well in the future. But I think I've been taking a lot of small sacrifices. Sacrifices at the beginning so I can make the bigger things happen later.
It will pay off as well. And it does. It does. I mean, I look at where I was when I started out and where I am now, and it's night and day. Absolutely night and day. And of course, you're growing, you're learning as you go as well. It's your business. You're building something now, a legacy piece, potentially, a retirement fund, and let's have some fun. That's the one thing that I do try and say to people like that are newer, that are, starting out. Try and enjoy it, gamify it. It is all a game, businesses. But it's very difficult when somebody says that. Somebody said that to me and I was like, yeah, it's all right for you. You've been doing it a while. You've got it all in place. But honestly, you'll look back and you'll think, do you know what? I wish I look back and I think, now I did enjoy it. I must admit, probably too much at times, but I never really, appreciated it as much as I do now. And I think sometimes, like yourself, you're quite level-headed there and you're already appreciating the fact that this is yours, that it is hard, but it will get easier over time, depending on what you choose to do. If you want to have 1,000 units, it's not going to get much easier. You're still going to have a massive headache of people that you need to control. So it's about just leveling it out and saying, is this a lifestyle business or is this going to be like a corporate business that I'm going to build up? And of course, the world's your oyster. Try a bit of both and see which one tickles your fancy. I tried both and realized I prefer the lifestyle business.
Yeah, I think that is probably what I'm aiming towards. You'll probably understand this when you're so consumed in what's happening at the beginning, aren't you? It's hard to you forget sometimes to look forward and see, right, is that, because your plans do change as well. As I said, I started this just going into my own essays and all of a sudden I've got, an essay management company. So to actually take a step back and work out where you're actually headed and where you want to take it is important because that does coincide a lot with the the fun things in life and making sure you do give yourself time.
Yeah, I wanted to be massive. I wanted about 250 units. And I realized when I got about halfway there that I didn't. And then, of course, that's another story. But and it's as I say, I do say it a lot, but more revenue doesn't mean more profit, and it really doesn't if you've got to be bringing in more and more people. So it's just finding that balance that's right for you. So I mean, if somebody was sort of sat on the fence right now, they're thinking about themselves, or they've listened to this, they've been inspired by your story, and it is an inspiring story. I want to say that. And they're looking at getting into serviced accommodation, and they were thinking to themselves, it's a chunk of change, that training, but if somebody was sat on the fence, what would you say to them?
Education is key, honestly. Like if I didn't have, because I did try and do it when I was watching YouTube videos and, you don't really get the full picture, and having a network around you of people who are doing the same thing is so important. So being able to learn step by step how the best way of setting up one, the best way of actually dealing with an SA business once it's running as well, because a lot of the training programs that I've seen, you do get the beginning, but you don't get the end or the ongoing, I should say. And with that, with the great, with the SA course that you guys run, having that community around you as well is so important, because there's so many people that I still keep in contact with that there's so many questions that I still have, right? And I'll just talk to them and say, you facing the same challenge or same problem? And they'll say yes or no, or they'll ask me a question about, it could be anything really, but something that you wouldn't be able to ask anyone else or find on Google or find, just by watching the same videos over and over again. But get educated and try and build a network of good people around you that are doing the similar thing.
Well, what I like to do on this channel is I like to ask you a quick fire round of questions. Is that all right?
Go for it, yeah.
And there's no right
I'll take some water first, just so I'm prepared.
Hey.
I'll take some water first, so I'm prepared.
Oh, good lad, good lad. Yeah. There's no right or wrong answer to this, and if you don't listen or do anything on it, then you don't. But what's the best advice you've been given?
Best advice I've been given. That is a good question. Oh, what did he say? Sorry, my mind's gone.
It's all right. Could always. Well, just say what you think it is.
I know what it was. Yeah, the best advice. It was kind of advice. He said to me, "There's a difference between understanding something and accepting something." So, for example, you could be working with somebody, and they could be a certain way, and you just don't understand why they are the way they are, and it could bother you, right? It could be one of your biggest gripes, and it's just you're knocking heads. But what he said is there's a big difference between understanding something and accepting it. So you don't always have to understand it to accept it. Once you accept it, it will always kind of work out. And I always try and use that in business, in relationships, in multiple ways, really. But for example, if my wife and I are having a bit of a disagreement, I don't always have to understand, but sometimes you have to accept. I tend to accept a lot more than she does. But ultimately, that advice is a good rule of thumb, and I try to follow that as much as I could.
No, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. Yeah, I think I can agree with you on that one. I think I accept more as well. It's an easier life.
Yeah, sure.
But no, I get that. I get that. I mean, one of the ones I like is you can't control how other people think about you. So if somebody's upset over something and I have no control over it, it's why am I getting upset over it? It's not my issue. It's not my problem. So just like you say, accept it and move on.
Yeah.
But I love that. I think that's really, really good. So if you could sit at the dinner table and have dinner with 3 people, dead or alive, famous, non-famous, who would you like to have dinner with and chat to?
That's like the golden question, isn't it? That people tend to ask. Who would I have? I probably have one. Would be my nan, who has passed away. She passed away when I was about 16, 17. Just because I'd love her to see now how things have turned out for her grandkids and things. I think it'd just be amazing to her. And to show her an iPhone, which I reckon would blow her mind. But the other 2, I guess, dead or alive. Who would I have? So I think. Do you know what? I was asked this question recently and I had 3 answers. I'm trying to remember who it was. I probably have Tony Robbins, because I think he's so expensive. If I had the choice just to have him at the dinner table, you would just utilize that hour, however long he was there, wouldn't you? You get as much information as you can from that.
Don't worry.
Denzel Washington. I'll go with Denzel.
Denzel
Washington. Yeah, it's not a bad film he's in, so I thought it'd be a good chat.
It would be. That'd be a good table, that as well. How do you think your nan would take it? Do you think she'd be all right on that? She'd hold her own on that table?
My nan would do. She'd be quite happy sitting next to Denzel, I'm sure.
Brilliant. Love it. Do you have 3 top podcasts that you listen to?
3 podcasts that I listen to, yes. So I do. When I was working at my previous job, podcasts in the car was all I listened to, and it was always property podcasts. So since I've started working, I've had no time, and in the car, it's phone call after phone call after phone call. So they have died down, although in fact, I can actually whip out the podcasts that I've been listening to recently. So top 3, The Diary of a CEO. I've always been a fan of Stephen Bartlett. I think his content's great, and he does have quite good guests on there. The High Performance podcast, I always found that really good.
Yeah, I like that one.
And the Peter Crouch podcast, because I think he's a legend.
He's funny, isn't he? He has reinvented himself brilliantly, hasn't he?
Yeah, honestly, that is genuinely like talking or listening to your mates in the pub, like just driving around with a smile on your face. Yeah, it's so good.
Yeah, he's really, really funny. That's great. And do you have, lastly, 3 top books? Doesn't have to be property related, can be anything, but 3 top books that you think have helped you change your life.
The first book. So I audiobook a lot because one, I have ADHD, so my attention span is next to nothing unless you're really zoned in. But there was one book that I read cover to cover, and I just couldn't put it down. And that's called Unbreakable. And I can't remember the guy's name, but I'm really into history, especially like Second World War history. And I lived in London for a few years, and on the tube, all you could do really is read or listen to music. So Unbreakable was the one I put cover to cover. That's about a soldier. I won't get into the full synopsis, but that's a good one for anyone to look at. There's another one called Into the Wild. That was a film, but written by a man called John Krakauer. That's a great book. And another one, Margin Powder, which is a good book.
Margin Powder. What's that about?
It's a true story about a guy that he got caught crossing a border with drugs, which sounds bad on paper, but that was essentially quite political. But yeah, that was the long and short of it.
Okay, all right, fair enough then. That's brilliant. That's brilliant. So, I mean, thank you very much for your time and coming on today. I would love to do a follow-up with you as well, maybe 3 or 4 months down the line, see how you're getting on with your systems and everything, if you're up for that, because it's always nice to get people back on and see how they're progressing and what they're up to, because things do change, it's like you say. But have you got any final thoughts before we go you want to leave the listeners with?
Final thoughts. I mean, in terms of SA, I think just get educated, as I said, and try and build that network. I'm on Instagram at Sargent Property Group. That's Sargent. There's a lot of content on there, and I answer every single question and every single message from anyone. When I first started, there were so many questions that I had, and there were so many people that would respond to me, or even just say, "Give me a call, and I'll answer your questions." So I would like to be that person for anyone else that needs any help, really.
Oh, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. We can put a link to that in the show notes as well. So if you're watching this or listening to this anywhere, then if you've got links, there will be a link in there. I'll link you to his to Michael's Instagram. Well, thank you very much for coming on, my friend. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Mark. It's been a pleasure to be here.
Good. Well, I hope you've all enjoyed this episode, and I hope that you have your vision and your focus all set in place. You know what your goals are. You can break your goals down into bite-sized chunks and push yourself further forward. As you know, these episodes come out twice a week, not always with interviews. Sometimes you just listen to my docile tone. So if you enjoy them, great stuff. Do feel free to share, leave a comment. And if you do share these, tag me into the posts where you share them, and I will share some love. What goes around comes around in life. So by helping me, I will in turn do my best to make sure that I help you. You take care of yourself and keep moving yourself forward, and come and join me in the next episode very soon. Bye for now.